Welcome to another episode on the little writing details. Today we'll be talking about how you as a writer or as a student of the English language can list or how you can enumerate items in your piece of writing. Firstly, you should understand that there are students, there are writers who unconsciously do not demarcate or separate the list, the items on a list when they write. And there are those who do not even know how to separate the penultimate item on a list from the final item on a list. So that's why it's important to pay attention to what we're going to be doing in this class. Two things we're going to be doing. First is to teach you how to remember to always separate the items on a list on a piece of writing. And secondly, I'll be teaching you how to separate the last two items, the penultimate and the final item in a piece of writing. Firstly, when you have series or several items or a number of items to mention or to enumerate in your writing piece or in your process of writing, you should remember, you should stay conscious to always separate every item that you list with a comma. When you list the first item, put a comma. The second item, put a comma. If you have five items, for example, to list, after the first, put a comma. After the second, put a comma. After the third, put a comma. After the fourth item, put a comma. And after that, you have the coordinating conjunction and before the last item. This is what I'm talking about. For example, I was in Qatar. I was in Qatar, comma, Dubai, Paris, and Italy last year. Okay. You can see what I have here. I have a list of items, a list of countries or places in this piece of writing. We have Qatar, we have Dubai, we have Paris, and we have Italy. Now, as a writer, when you when you have a list like this to make your piece of writing, remember to always separate whatever that you write with a comma, right? I've got four places to list, to enumerate in this, right? In the sentence, the first is Qatar, the next is Dubai, the next is Paris, and we have Italy. Now, you notice there I have a comma after Qatar. Have Dubai, have Dubai, then a comma after that. We have Paris. Before the final item, we have the conjunction and, but before the conjunction and, I don't have Paris. So this is the first thing that I want you to be conscious of in your process of writing as a writer or as a student of the English language. When you're listing something, do well. Remember, stay conscious, to separate every item with a comma. That is the first objective in this video. Always stay conscious to separate every item you list, every item you mention in a list. So that is that about the first objective of this class. Now, secondly, why should you have a comma, between, separating the penultimate item from the final item? Now, if I take away this, if I take away the comma here before this conjunction and, what you're doing, in other words, what you're doing basically is that Paris and Italy are treated as a single entity, as a single item. So as a writer, if you want to say that Paris and Italy are a single item, a singular item, for example, you should have the conjunction and here. So I was in Qatar, Dubai, and Paris and Italy last year. But this will not work in this case because Paris and Italy are two different places. So this structure is definitely going to be wrong. The only time that you have this type of structure when you add and, before the last two items is when you have concepts, you have conceptual ideas to talk about, not just ideas. When you have ideas, concept or conceptual ideas to talk about. For example, today we'll be talking about why marriages fail, reasons why couples don't get along in relationships. That's a comma. As I elongate the end of every unit of every item, that's a comma. So we'll be talking about why marriages fail today, reason couples don't get along in relationships, government role in helping couples get better, and finally, the roles of children in helping the parents get along in marriage. Now, when you have concepts like that to talk about, if the last item consists of two different ideas, then of course you know that when you want to join two ideas together, you mention, okay, let me just put this into writing. If I say, let's talk about, let's take this out. Let's talk about governance. Let's talk about governance, marriage, education, and literacy. Can you see this? Now, education and literacy here are treated as a single entity, as a single idea. So let's talk about governance, marriage, education and literacy, public speaking, comma, and business and administration. Okay, now take a look at this example. This is quite different from the example on my visit to Qatar, Dubai, Paris, and Italy. Here you have items. Okay, let's just get to it. Let's talk about governance, marriage, education, and literacy. Education and literacy here simply refers to a single item, okay? So, education, this is just one item on the list. Governance is the first. Number two is marriage. Number three is education and literacy. Education and literacy. The first item here is public speaking. And finally, we have business, education, and administration. Now, okay, number five is business administration. Business and administration. This is the number five item on this list. Public speaking is number four. Education and literacy is number three. Governance is number one. Marriage is number two. Public speaking is number four. And number five is business and administration. So as a writer, when you have this type of situation, where the last item consists of two things, of two items making up one, you don't put a comma here. You shouldn't put a comma here because this is just one item. And when you see and, the conjunction and, it means you want to talk about the final item on the list. And before you have the conjunction and, you should have a comma. This shows that business and administration is not the same as, it's a different point, it's a different item from public speaking. But if I take away this comma, I've changed the trajectory or the meaning of this listing. What do I mean? Let's take this again. Let's talk about governance, marriage, education, and literacy, public speaking, and business and administration. This doesn't make sense. What you're trying to say is public speaking and business and administration are the same item, are to be taken together, as a single unit on this list. But that, in this case, is not the case. So you should have a comma introduced. Just remember what I've said before, that when you have to list 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items on a list, remember that every item that you mention, that you enumerate, should be separated with or by a comma. Comma after the first, comma after the second, comma after the third, comma after the fourth. If you have 6 things, for example, now after the fifth item, you should have a comma before your conjunction and then you then have the final item being written. So that is basically for this video. Now I hope you've learned how to stay conscious when you're listing your items, and secondly, you know how to separate the penultimate item on a list from the final item on a list. Once again, this is Little Writing Details. See you in the next video, but remember to keep speaking right and keep learning right.